Everybody, thanks for watching. Just a quick reminder that Saturn Satan Final is still available, as well as Stock Market Final. Make sure you guys take advantage of that. Also, I understand a lot of people, you guys are having issues with that link for the 2 videos, which I said is 4. So I know a lot of people haven't gotten all 4 videos, or some of you have gotten 5 videos, or not the 4 videos that's supposed to be in the link. These are the 4 videos that should be in the link for Never Pay Again members who paid the $9.99. It was for 2 videos, you got 4. And as I said, I'll be adding all new upcoming videos to that link. So it's an issue with Podia. Podia is taking care of it. So you guys can get the correct videos. For those who didn't, I've seen a lot of people got various videos, and that's just a glitch on their side. So they're taking care of it. But now for the lecture, my first live lecture, I'll be at MGM. And this lecture is going to be on the Blackamoors and a lot more. So we're going to get into a lot of deep stuff. I got a special guest, Ace Cloud, that's coming to help me out with this thing and take questions. And yeah, it's going to be a cool live event. Not sure which platform I'm going to be using for the live event, but streamed to Merkabah Academy or from a different site. I'll let you guys know. But everybody who orders, you will get the link 2 hours before we air, before we go live. So that gives us enough time to fix any errors if there's any. So we'll make sure you guys get those links before we go live. So it's going to be a cool time. As I said, probably only 200 to 1,000 people will be allowed for the live stream, depending on what platform we end up using. So make sure you guys grab it. Never Pay Again members got first crack at it. I sent out emails to all Never Pay Again members. Make sure you guys check your email. So the spots they're gonna go quick. I'm not gonna tell you how many left, but there's not that many left. Make sure you guys grab the spot. Like I said, if the link doesn't work, then that means we're out, we're done. So if you want to participate, you can go ahead and grab your spot now. The video will be available after the live stream and is edited. It will be out for the same exact price. So you want to participate live and see it live, grab it now. Also, everybody who participates in the live, everybody who orders, you guys will also get the download link once the video is completed. So once the lecture is over and the video is edited, you guys will get the download link emailed to you guys after that. So even if you can't make the live stream, you'll still get the video. Once it's over, it'll be emailed to you. Also, for anybody still having login issues, best bet now would be to, as I said, clear your browser, restart the computer, change browsers or what have you, or just try to create a different page. And if that works for you, then send me an email, let me know, so we can update that page. It's a lot of issues with the whole thing. As I said, we're still updating, so that's part of the problem, and WordPress is working on that issue as well. So we'll get that taken care of, and apologies for the people that are still having issues, but a lot of you guys have fixed the problem that I've been seeing. So yeah, we'll get it straightened out, but appreciate everybody's patience on that. It's a lot coming up, a lot of videos, a lot of new stuff coming up. So yeah, we got a lot going on. This whole live lecture is going to be great. And I appreciate everybody who already supported from my Never Pay Again members. I just posted it live, so make sure you guys take advantage of it. It's going to be pretty cool. But yeah, let's get into this video. When you go back to medieval times, medieval times, they had this practice to where there was a law that you could not operate or perform certain procedures on a person if you didn't first check with the moon. You had to check for the position of the moon before they would let you operate on the patient, because it was really important back then. And as you'll see in this video, there was a big connection between, religion and astrology back then that a lot of people don't understand. So you couldn't even, give medicine at certain times without checking on the moon. This was a law. It's one of these things they swept under the rug. So this whole thing has to do with medical astrology, and the ancient Egyptians is where you'll find this talked about the most. And we know the Greeks and the Romans will piggyback on it. You can find it in Persia, and the Arabs actually use it as well. So medical astrology, and medical astrology is really based on the 4 humors. And you'll understand what I call the humors in a second. So you have the 4 humors, right? So the 4 humors would be blood. It would be phlegm, like, mucus, phlegm. You have yellow bile and black bile. These are the 4 humors. So with the 4 humors, it's basically dealing with, liquids in the body. And how they understood it back then was these liquids, if they were unbalanced or too much of one or too little of the other, it will cause, mood swings. It will cause you to feel ill. This is how they was able to really look at, and diagnose a person by, these things. Back then they had bloodletting, and they would check your blood, and yellow bile has to do with urine, and this is what they would check. We still do the same thing to this day. You have a urinalysis, you have a blood test for them to determine what's wrong with you. But this is what they was doing way back then, medieval times. This was, law that you had to do it this way and check with the moon, because the moon played a pivotal role in whether or not they could figure out what was wrong with you and how to fix the problem. So it says here, although the theory of the four humors does appear in some Hippocratic texts, the Hippocratic writers accepted the existence of only two humors, while some refrained from discussing the humoral theory at all. Humoralism, or the doctrine of the four temperaments, which we're going to get into that in a second, as a medical theory, retained its popularity for centuries, largely through the influence of the writings of Galen. Hippocrates' theory of four humors was linked with the popular theory of the four elements, which we're going to get into this: earth, fire, water, and air, which basically is a big deal when it comes to these, proposed by Empedocles. But this link was not proposed by Hippocrates or Galen, who referred primarily to bodily fluids. While Galen thought that the humors were formed in the body rather than ingested, he believed the different foods had varying potential to act upon the body to produce different humors. Warm food, for example, tended to produce yellow bile, while cold foods tended to produce phlegm. Seasons of the year, periods of life, geographic regions, and occupations also influenced the nature of the humors formed. As such, certain seasons and geographic areas were understood to cause imbalances in the humors, leading to varying types of diseases across time and space. For example, cities exposed to hot winds were seen as having higher rates of digestive problems as a result of excess phlegm running down from the head, while cities exposed to cold winds were associated with diseases of the lungs, acute disease, and hardness of the bowels, as well as ophthalmies, which is issues with the eyes, and nosebleeds. Cities to the west, meanwhile, were believed to produce weak, unhealthy, pale people that were subject to all manner of diseases. In the treatise, Air, Water, Places, an Hippocratic physician is described arriving to an unnamed city where they test various factors of nature, including the wind, water, and soil, to predict the direct influence on the disease specific to the city based on the season and the individual. Diseases could be the result of the corruption of one or more of the humors, which could be caused by environmental circumstances, dietary changes, or many other factors. These defects were thought to be caused by vapors inhaled or absorbed by the body. We're going to talk about that later because you got to think about that. Vapors inhaled or absorbed by the body. Greeks and Romans, and the later Muslim and Western European medical establishments that adopted and adapted classical medical philosophy, believed that each of these humors would wax and wane in the body depending on diet and activity. When a patient was suffering from a surplus of imbalance of one of the four humors, then said patient's personality and or physical health could be negatively affected. So we have the four humors, and the four humors basically split the body, in four parts. So the four humors, then we have the four temperaments. So four humors, four temperaments that corresponds with the four humors. So the four temperaments would be sanguine, then we have choleric, then we have melancholic, then we have phlegmatic. So basically you have, too much blood, you will have, sanguine. And this would basically deal with emotions. So the four temperaments would deal with your emotions. So we always say, you got a crazy temper, your temper. This is where it comes from, the temperaments. So the four temperaments. So now we have this connection with, so far the moon, with our body, this liquid in our body, which we know how the moon reacts to liquid. And then now we have these emotions. So you got, the four humors, and now we have the four temperaments. And then when you have, let's say, too much blood, you have this, Sing-Wen effect, which deals with basically, and not all the effects are bad effects. Understand there's a lot more, but we won't get into the basic ones. So Sing-Wen would basically deal with you being, optimistic in a bad situation. You're not crazy. You're not, too up, too down. You're optimistic and you're positive, right? So we have choleric, and choleric will basically deal with you being, irritated, being in a bad mood. And you have what melancholic basically is sadness and depression. And then you have phlegmatic, which is basically, you being calm. You chill, you calm, you don't really have too much emotions at the moment. You're really unemotional when this happens. So when you have too much blood, you have Sing-Wen. When you have too much yellow bile, that causes the choleric. Black bile would be, of course, melancholic. Note the melon, has to deal with blackness. So black bile. So that's sadness, depression. Of course, they would give us the word shit, black. And then you have phlegm, which would deal with the phlegmatic, which deals with you being calm and, cool. So again, 4 humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, phlegm. And then we have the 4 temperaments. These split the body in 4 parts. Okay. 4 temperaments: choleric, melancholic, phlegmatic, and Sing-Wen. So chart right there, you can see what I'm talking about. And again, the words, we understand these play on words and who's giving us these words. And, we have 4 humors, humor, which you're humorous. Humor has to do with your mood. What type of humor are you in? And then understand, we get the 4 humors. We're talking about BC, talking about 4th century BC. So we get the humors before we get the word human, which we didn't get into the 13th century, the word human. So understand where they got that human from, even though we know hue is like a color. But remember, we talked about yellow bile, black bile, it's colors. We're talking about a time where they're trying to put all this stuff together, and words is just bouncing off each other. And we start tracing words back, you'll see where a lot of them came from. And of course, this stuff will be Greek. So we have the 4 humors and we have the 4 temperaments, and they split the body into 4 parts. These 4 parts also correspond to, 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. So these also correspond with the zodiac, which we'll get into more in a second. So you have this, 4 temperaments, 4 elements, 4 humors, the zodiac, and this would basically give us the zodiac man, which this video is basically about the zodiac body. So when you go back in medieval times, this was something that was, it was known. It was something everybody used, understanding the zodiac man. So this is where we get, Jesus on the cross of the zodiac. It comes from this. And it's one of the things that if you was around at that time, you would just know. You would be able to make that connection quickly if you was a person that was into astrology and understanding the body in little esoteric circles. These are the people who started to come out when the Bible was introduced, and it was preaching it. And these people was coming out and saying, no, this is astrology. This is that. And these are the people they was killing off, and why they basically just came out and said, well, if you know about astrology, if you know about alchemy and so on and so forth, it's witchcraft, demon worship, because they was making these connections and understanding what this stuff was about. So you have, they show the zodiac man on the cross of the zodiac. Jesus was shown the same way. There are too many medieval pictures, paintings of Jesus on the zodiac, as you can see here. He's the sun. Look around him. You have Jesus, you have the zodiac around him, because they understood what he represents and that he's basically you, the zodiac man. So much to this. Jesus is you, the zodiac man. I talked about how Jesus is your consciousness. God is your all-powerful subconscious. You represent the 12 signs of the zodiac, which are the disciples, which is all of the signs, which is all of us, basically. So this is something, as I said, everybody knew about. They all knew. They all understood what this stuff represented and how it was. The church and astrology back then was connected because, as I said, it was a law for you to understand the moon's position in order for you to practice medicine. You had to know certain things about the body, and you had to understand these things about the zodiac. So the church and the zodiac went hand in hand, and it's, clear when you look at a lot of the medieval churches that stand today. the entryway. When you walk in, they call it the portal. When you walk in, you see the little archway where it's a lot of zodiac carvings there. So it says here, I'm just going to skip down here, and it says, of the zodiac in this religious imagination is echoed by at least 50 extant ecclesiastical buildings featuring exterior sculpted zodiac signs built between 1050 and 1500 across Western Europe. 39 cathedrals, basilicas, abbeys, and churches feature zodiacal sculptures on one or more portals, the majority from 12th century France. Despite the pervasive presence of this motif in medieval art, only about 10% of these zodiac portals have been studied extensively, particularly in relation to one another. This elite 10% of zodiac portals connected with wealthy urban or monastic centers overseen by a powerful group of clergy and aristocrats represent only an oblique keyhole glimpse of this popular image cycle. It is only by taking a comprehensive stance, including relatively minor churches, that a new understanding emerges, specifically a deeper relationship between architecture, zodiac signs, and church portals. Prefaced by the wide scope of the motif and its role in church decorations, it is beneficial to re-examine even the most studied zodiac portals. This study will therefore present new interpretations of zodiac portals by carefully defining medieval astrology and reimagining the zodiac in its medieval context with a clear view of astronomy, processions, and viewership. So it's a clear connection between the zodiac and Christianity, the church or what have you. We understand the moon worship with Islam, the sun worship with Christianity. You can look at the Pope, the hats, the signs, the symbol. It's talking about the sun. The sun and the moon is everything. You can't have one without the other. When you go back during, ancient Egyptian times, any ancient civilization, the sun and the moon is everything. But the Bible is giving you so many hints, as to, I gave you guys examples before about God being the sun, and so many different times they pointed out in the Bible. But if you remember, with Jesus is born, the first sign. What's the first sign of the zodiac? Will be Virgo, the virgin. So we have Jesus coming into the world, virgin, a virgin birth, Virgo, right? So what does it say in Revelations? The Revelations is talking about him coming back as the Lion of Judah, the lion. What is the last zodiacal symbol? It's Leo, the lion. So Jesus is supposed to come back as the lion, and he's supposed to bring the kingdom of heaven with him and be this Lion of Judah and come back and, so on and so forth. Now remember, Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, and he's telling Nicodemus about, you can see the kingdom of heaven when you're born again. And Nicodemus is like, what you mean born again? I gotta, go back in the womb to be born again. How does that work? Understand. So it's giving you reincarnation. So he's giving you that whole cycle of life and death, birth, rebirth. It's the same situation. So you have Jesus coming in as the Virgo from the Virgin Mary, and then coming back. It's talk about him basically being reincarnated. Jesus is you. So the whole thing about, hey, you're going to come again. Jesus is going to return. You're going to return. And the zodiac plays a big part in all of this. I've talked about reincarnation a lot in a lot of my videos. It's giving you that you're going to return. And that's what it is. That's basically what it's talking about. It's not no place you're going to go in heaven or anything like that. It's clearly telling you what heaven is. Heaven is the woman's womb. That's where you're going to come back through the birth canal. How water breaks and then she gives birth to you. So we got into this whole thing. But understand how the zodiac plays a part in that when it's trying to give you those hints. Virgo, first sign, Jesus coming back, which will be the end times, the end of the zodiac. Leo, the lion. Okay. So of course, we got to think about this whole thing and how the moon will actually affect us, bodily, like how it would affect us, our moods. So we understand basically anywhere you live in the world, the lowest level would be sea level, right? So if the moon way up there can affect the tides, the currents, or what have you, then us living in our, apartment on the second floor or fifth floor, basically being closer to it, we would be affected. It's just something that sounds crazy and spooky because we ain't really taught about this, but we understand the effects
the moon have, and we understand about mood swings. We understand with women how that works with, period, and the whole thing with, when your girl's on her period, run. So this is one of the reasons why they give us, the werewolf, and it's a full moon. It's like a werewolf is going to come out and this dude's going to be crazy or what have you. This werewolf is going to chase you around and kill you. And this is where this stuff comes from. The tide of the moon basically turning the tides or what have you. So it will all depend on the phases of the moon. So how we are affected by the moon would depend on the moon phases. So we got a bunch of moon phases as you can see here. And this basically deals with how much light is going to be shining on the moon. And that will determine how much of the moon we'll see, whether it be, crescent moon or quarter moon or half moon or full moon, and, so on and so forth. Really depends on how much sunlight. The fact that, of course, we come from our parents, why don't we get this? And people don't understand this, how deep this is. Yeah, we come from our parents. So the fact that these genetic traits is passed down to us to where we can look like our parents, we can do things that our parents did or our grandparents did, that tells you right there that that generation was passed down. That knowledge, that energy was passed down through your parents to you, and you now carry it. Which tells you what? That reincarnation is a real thing and that the energy continues. We're going to get into energy a lot in this video. We're going to get into it a lot because you need to understand it's the same energy. We've been so confused by Adam and Eve and who was here first and so on and so forth that we don't understand that basic principle that we're all energy, the same energy experiencing itself in a physical form. This one cosmic conscious energy that's here that wants to experience this physical reality on this level. The only way possible to do it is to be in the physical, plain and simple. So energy all around us, plain and simple. We got to understand that it's energy everywhere. A lot of energy is seen, but a lot of it is also unseen. Now, we talked about in ancient Egypt how they had this wireless energy, the whole true purpose of the pyramids and the whole thing about, the ionosphere and the negative ions and how the pyramids was producing these negative ions and what that means and how it benefits us. And we talked about the tombs. When you go into a lot of these Egyptian tombs, there was evidence that there was a light source within there, a wireless light source. And then we get into Nikola Tesla. Tesla discovered this, and he basically went in and broke down the science on this whole thing. And this is what it says. Just go down here. It says, at the height of his career, the pioneering electrical engineer Nikola Tesla became obsessed with an idea. He theorized that electricity could be transmitted wirelessly through the air at long distances, either via a series of strategically positioned towers or hopping across a system of suspended balloons. So Tesla understood it. He broke it down how this was possible. And that was the thing with Tesla. It's all about energy, electricity. The whole thing with the, car right now and the Tesla that's out now, it's about electricity. So he understood this. And, when you understand the story real quick about Tesla, it was JP Morgan that basically funded him to go ahead and do this project. And, he led on that the project was basically going to be to build this whole, electrical tower that was going to kind of make it easier to send information between ships. And he had to put them on, different coasts. I think one was going to be in Europe, one's going to be in the Americas. And it was going to kind of have like a monopoly on being able to send, information or signals, via ships. And JP Morgan was one of the owners of the Titanic and one of the owners of a lot of ships. Everybody know his family was wealthy and all that. But Tesla was basically working on, his whole wireless energy invention to basically give everybody free energy. That was his goal, to have the world have free energy, because he knew the energy was everywhere. It was in the air. And once JP Morgan found out about it, he cut all ties and cut funding. And we know that Tesla ended up dying, alone in his apartment. And broke. So big deal about understanding Tesla, and it's so much more to him that we'll get into in the next video because it's important. But so we have this understanding. Energy all around us, everywhere. And there's so much stuff that happens that people don't understand. And one of the biggest things that we take for granted is air. Air is everywhere. Wind. how is it possible? How do we get air? How does wind blow? And it's just something we take for granted every day. And we don't really understand that this energy around us. So when you start to think about energy, it's like where? But every single thing, every single piece of matter has energy and emits energy, which we'll get into. But with air, Earth is the reason why we can have air. And then you have to think about terraforming a planet and why Earth would be important. So we just call Earth, Earth. It's just Earth. We also call ground Earth, but what is that? And we know it comes from out there. We know we see meteors and comets and we see, some have metal in it, but it's rock, dirt, dust. What is that from? So when you start breaking it down to basic, particles and atoms, it's like Earth must be really important, but it's important because if you're going to have life, you need Earth, you need rock, because everything stems from the Earth. It's a big deal. So you have the sun basically heat up the ground, and you have, air is a molecule, and it's actually a couple molecules, oxygen, nitrogen, oxygen. There's a few other, gases and molecules, but you have the sun heat up the Earth. And then what you have is, as the Earth get hotter, you have this air. Air is created. And then the hotter it get, the more it begins to fan out and rises. And then we have air. So air rises, right? So then on the flip side, you have that hot air rising. On the flip side, you have cool air. And we know the cooler air basically takes the place of the air that rises, if it's near. So the warmer air, it expands, it rises, gets lighter. And the cooler air is dense, it's heavy, it weighs down, it takes the place of the rising, lighter expanding air. And then you have wind. So again, that process is called wind. So we have this. So this is energy moving around us 24/7. So since it's always wind, this is always happening. So it says here, when thermal energy radiates from the sun, it heats both the land and ocean. But water has a specific high heat capacity, so it heats up slower than land. This temperature difference creates a convection current, which then manifests as wind. This wind possesses kinetic energy, which it can transfer to grains of sand on the beach by carrying them a short distance. If the moving sand hits an obstacle, it stops due to the friction created by the contact, and its kinetic energy is then transformed into thermal energy or heat. Once enough sand builds up over time, these collisions can create sand dunes and possibly even an entire dune field. That's what I learned in school. These newly formed sand dunes provide a unique environment for plants and animals. A plant may grow in these dunes by using light energy. Light energy is big. We'll get into that. A plant may grow in these dunes by using light energy radiated from the sun to transform water and carbon dioxide into chemical energy, which is stored in sugar. When an animal eats the plant, it uses the energy stored in that sugar to heat its body and move around, transforming the chemical energy into kinetic and thermal energy. Though it may not always be obvious, energy transfers and transmissions constantly happen all around us and are what enable life as we know it to exist. The sun, that's why the sun is God. So when Christians talking about, oh, God created us and created that, and people who don't believe in reincarnation, it's like, well, how is he creating a new body, a new energy? Body, understand, it's material, but a new energy to go in that body. How is that possible when energy, as it says here, energy cannot be created or destroyed, meaning that the total amount of energy in the universe has always been and will always be constant. However, this does not mean that energy is immutable. It can change form and even transfer between objects, which basically what he was saying, energy cannot be created or destroyed by transfer from one form to another. It's important stuff, understanding that. So just the whole concept of God creating this new energy that people think, or Christians will have us believe, is this whole totally new person and not a reincarnation or a transformation of, energy that existed. So reincarnation, you coming back in a different body, but the same energy that the body locks away those memories for a reason. But the DNA activates and does what it's supposed to do and recalls the memories it needs to recall, like how to walk and talk and so on and so forth, depending on the body and, how good it's, taken care of, or how good the mom was and, prenatal care. So we have energy from the ground, molecules in the ground. We have energy in the air. We have this whole process with light, which we'll get into. And it's so much going on around us. And we heard this whole term of airways. Remember, for those of you who are old enough to remember radio stations and airways and stuff like that, everything's digital for a reason. So we had airwaves, and it was like, oh, we're playing your station on the airwaves. And it was like, what was that about? The airwaves. So we know radio stations had those huge radio towers, satellites or what have you. And then we had, that's the transmitter. We had the receiver, which would be our radios. Your radio picked up this signal. Again, this is stuff that we just so nonchalantly take, for granted and not really understanding the process and how it really is, big to us and the universe. So we have these radios that's picking up this signal coming from this large antenna at the radio station, but we never understood the process. I mean, you got to think about it. Okay, so how does it work? Like, you got this big radio tower and somehow I'm receiving a signal from that tower to my little radio. How is that possible? I can't see it. And how is it that I can't see it and it's energy? How is it possible to transfer this music and voice to a signal that I can't see that's going to go into my radio and then, give me sound? It's just crazy. And the science behind, radio stations is real simple. That tower has electricity flowing through it, and the flow of the electricity causes the electrons within the antenna to basically vibrate, which creates radio waves. And these radio waves basically, transmit out. And if you have a radio that is tuned in to that frequency, which will be that station's number, you might as well say, then you'll be in tune with that radio. Now, we as conscious people, we talk about being in tune with the universe and in tune with, and we don't go back and think about where did we hear these terms and phrases from. Like, you got to tune into your favorite television programming. Tune into tune. And it's basically you tuning in and getting in tune with, what's being put out. But it's deeper because we can, on so many other levels, get in tune. We just don't know how. We know what they gave us. So we have these radio waves. And radio waves is basically electromagnetic radiation traveling at the speed of light. So that light or that radiation or that frequency reaches our radio. So then, what is light? It's traveling at the speed of light. What is light? Light is energy, of course. Light has a frequency just like those radio waves have a frequency. So these electromagnetic waves is covered by the electromagnetic spectrum, which is a range of frequencies of electromagnetic radiation in regards to its wavelength, frequency, and photon energy, as we can see here in this chart. So the longer the wavelength, the lower the frequency, and the shorter the wavelength, the higher the frequency. And there is an infinite range of frequencies in electromagnetic waves. So this range from radio waves, microwaves, infrared, light that we can see, visible light, which would be basically the color spectrum. Then we have like X-rays and gamma rays or what have you. And this is the spectrum. And we heard this whole term, the electromagnetic spectrum or the spectrum of light. And this is what, we can see, this visible light. It's the only spectrum we was given. And we've been told animals can see different spectrums, seeing different things that we can't see. But this is what we can see for a reason. And if you think about it, with all this air and energy going around, I mean, who wants to see the Bluetooth signal or the Wi-Fi signal? We don't want to see that.